Hey guys, on this episode of Samp&Chance this week, we are going to be sitting down with one and only Jaye Byard, the Canadian champion, number 3 in the world. Guys, you do not want to miss this episode. It is motivational, it's inspiring, and it's truthful. You guys don't want to miss it. Samp&Chance and Jaye out. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Samp&Chance. I am your host, Bobby Sampson, joined as always, my man in the Husky shirt, Mr. Chance Michaels. And right down below us, ladies and gentlemen, we have the number 3 ranked heavyweight Canadian champion of the world, Mr. Jaye Byard. Jay, how are you, brother?
I'm good, my friend. How are you? And it's
Okay.
Byard, just so you know.
Awesome, brother. So first thing I want to ask you very simply, are we pronouncing your last name correctly? Just going through, researching you. People say Beard, people say Byard. What's the right pronunciation?
Byard is actually how it would be properly pronounced. Like
Byard.
by the yard, Byard. Yeah.
Got it. Byard. So everyone listening, from now on, you have no excuse. Mr. Byard.
Thank you.
Brother, thank you for joining us. You're coming off a really strenuous 6-round fight that saw you victorious. But before we go there, what got you into this path, into this life of boxing? You started quite late. If you could share with us a little bit about that.
Actually, no, it was quite young. I started at about 10 years old. I
Oh,
visited a boxing club in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And actually, what brought me into boxing was I had just recently moved back to the north end of Halifax from out west in Edmonton, where I was born in the late 80s, early 90s. And I was having a difficult time adjusting in the neighborhood, so I was getting bullied a lot and picked on. So boxing ended up being that avenue for me that I was introduced to by my grandfather's cousin, the late Keith Paris, and he was a boxer like about 100 years ago in the pros, and he had a pretty dismal record as a professional. I think he was like 1 in 10 or 11, but he was the guy that brought me in his late 70s, and it was just the kind of nostalgia that you think of when you walk into a boxing club, the smell, the feel, the look, the sound of the bags hitting, and me just getting told to run off and hit the bag there while him and the coach were talking a little bit, right? I had no idea what I was doing, but I tuckered myself out, and then coach came to me there, the late Taylor Gordon, and he bent down to me and he said, I heard about what's going on in the neighborhood, and ultimately, if you can run here every day after school, he said, then we'll train you. And he said, if you do that, he said, would you believe that you'll be a champion one day, right? And so that was really what I hung on to at a very young age. I was still too young to even actually compete when I started boxing, so I trained for like a year, almost 2 years by the time I got my first amateur competition, right? So yeah, I think that was really instrumental for me because I wasn't just taught about boxing, I was taught about being a good human being at the boxing club.
fantastic,
How,
fantastic.
how old were you when you had your first amateur fight?
I was as soon as I was old enough to compete, so I believe it was like 12.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
I was pretty scary actually. I remember the guy. I fought him twice in a row. There, his name was Danny Rankin, and the second time that I fought him, I had won that as well. But I hit him with an overhand left in the fight in the second round. This was in Cape Breton in New Waterford, Ring 73. This little old place that used to convert a bingo hall, I think it was, into the boxing event there. And I hit him with a shot, and I fractured the hairline, fractured my thumb, and I knew it hurt because it was just throbbing. Bell rang, and I went back to the corner, and I was just freaking out, telling my coach, "I don't think I can go out there for this round." And he's like, "Listen," he's like, just jab the whole round." He's like, "You got the fight won." So I get up, I'm like, okay. The bell rings, and then it rings again, and I'm kind of confused. And the referee comes up, takes a look at it, and he stops the fight. I guess I had knocked the guy's tooth out in the in the exchange or something when I fractured my hand, and thank goodness the rest stopped the fight because my hand was pretty damn sore.
Oh man, oh man. Um, so as your career progressed, unfortunately, some things, if it's okay with you, we'll just quickly touch on it. Some things transpired in life that led you into a different direction. Um, did you find boxing at that time as well to be something you needed to persevere through that time?
I think it did. I mean, it wasn't something that came easy. I mean, I made some mistakes as a young man, and unfortunately, I was involved in a situation where, unfortunately, somebody lost their life, and myself and a number of other individuals were really impacted by that over the course of the years that ensued, right? But I had to really turn that around and try and make it a transformative experience. And I remember first getting locked up at 16 years old and just saying that I'm gonna box again one day. And for those that know my story, I picked a life sentence up at 16 years old and was sent up the line to the adult system. And so saying that was definitely kind of like having a target on my back within corrections and the people that are making decisions in your life, right? So nobody supported it, I can assure you. So it was really one of those things that I just had to keep my mind right, take care of my body while I was in there, and just pray for that opportunity to get out and just pursue my childhood dream, right? And that's what I'm doing right now. So
No, and in respect to that, I understand. It can be a very trying and difficult time. I'm just curious, like, how did you like mentally? You must have had to really, really, become very strong. How was that process for you and for you overall?
good question. Honestly, I think I had a really difficult life before I ever came into trouble with the law. So, like the struggle and the survival that I had to, you know, experience up until that point was like the training camp for going to prison at 16 years old and starting off in a maximum security prison. So, back east in the Maritimes, the prisons are very different than they are out here, and racial politics were really a prevalent factor when I came up the line. Um, so mentally, I was already strong. I was already prepared to like when I turned myself in. I was like, okay, like I'm gonna pick a life sentence up out of this. I'm looking at life 10, and I could hopefully be out in like 7.5, 8 years is what I'm saying in my head before I walk myself in there, right? Ultimately it ended up being a little bit longer, and really what I truly didn't understand is life means life. You're serving every day of your life until 3 days after you're dead in Canada. So the eligibility dates are really the only thing that people get caught up on, right? And they feel somebody needs to serve more time or less time. It's like they're serving time whether they're in the community or whether they're incarcerated in an institution, right? So
Got it.
I still have a prison. It's 50 square mile radius. It's a heck of a lot nicer than the ones that I was in before. That's the way I look at it.
No, absolutely,
Want to go
absolutely.
inside of my prison, I gotta put paperwork in and ask for permission, right? That's a consequence of the mistakes that I made, right?
Get it. I get it.
So after you were released, did you continue boxing right away? Did you take some time off, or what was that like being released, and what did you do?
A good question. Basically, the first 8.5 years that I had served, I was very much vocal about wanting to pursue my boxing career. The feedback that I was given is that maybe I should be looking at a different hobby. And I'm like, well, it's not a hobby when you're a four-time Canadian champion. It's a career. So, basically, there's a lot of stuff that happens when you're inside. There's like assessments that get done on you that evaluate you as a person, even though a lot of them don't have anything to do with your particular dynamics. It just could be, statistics and all that kind of stuff. And you're lumped into a pile with people that did something before. And the
Yeah.
percentage chances are that you might do this within 5 years. And that somehow ends up defining you as a human being, right? So you have to find ways to try and I guess fight that sort of stuff, right? Like when I got out after 8.5 years, I wanted to pursue my boxing career. I was 24 years old. I was up in Kelowna, and there was no support at all. In fact, it was, I was more or less threatened that if I even had physical contact with anybody, that I'd get suspended and I'd have to deal with the parole board on it, right?
Yeah.
So when we had a parole hearing, I asked the parole board after the hearing, like, what's your guys' take on my boxing career here? Like, I respect that it's a really polarizing topic given my history, right?
Yeah.
And I understand that. But this is my way of being able to provide for myself and to be a contributing member of society.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so, basically, they said, look, it's a case management team decision, and they flipped the ball back to corrections. And then I realized that I had to find a parole officer that was okay with me pursuing my career, right? So unfortunately, then I was sent back for 11 and a half more years without any charges. And essentially, when I got back out, I was almost 37, and I was a lot quieter about wanting to pursue my boxing career. I just kind of went to it. So, I got out and I started getting involved in the Amateur Boxing Association in BC, and also I guess an organization that kind of folded called ComSport. I had a couple fights there, but really my goal was about getting to the pros. I mean, I was fortunate in 2018 to win the 2018 provincials for super heavyweight out here, and then the 2019 Golden Gloves, the 80th Golden Gloves. I won that out here as well, and that was booking my ticket for the nationals there that year. But unfortunately, I got suspended for about 120 days, and I got back out, and I missed that opportunity, and also an opportunity to try out for the BC Lions. But basically, it set me up for a difficult, pro debut against a monster, in November of 2019, and beginning my pro career in a real unorthodox convention.
Awesome. So yeah, so you started off in 2019, and I'll only bring this up, Jay, because this is the motivation. You started your career professionally at 0-4. Now,
Yeah.
based on everything that you've told us to this point, man, it feels like you've had to climb mental obstacle. It's not even physical at this point. It's mental obstacle after mental obstacle. So you start your career finally, you start off your 0-4. And at that point, do you think, okay, what am I doing? Like, how do you push yourself? Because now you won 7 straight all by knockout. So what's that transition?
um, I've been out here in BC for 24 years now,
Okay.
since January 2000.
Okay.
But 17 years of that, was incarcerated basically. And so when I got out, I had to start over and develop a whole new social circle. And when you're not from someplace, it's difficult to have people that are lifers in that sport or that business accept their welcome, right? And all of my accolades, with the exception of the ones I mentioned in 2017 and 18, the amateurs came from Nova Scotia, right? So there wasn't anybody out here that could necessarily take any credit for the accolades and accomplishments that I had. And I think when then you start having some struggles, it's real easy for people just to not want to get behind, right? So I think there was a variety of things going on that were contributing to that. Ultimately, I had to get myself to a place mentally where I was just where I'm at now, and I had to have pretty much everybody walk away and give up and lose faith and placate to me at that point. And then it was like, okay, I'm right where I need to be now. There's no pressure on me. There's no expectations. I've got nobody in my corner except the one guy that still basically honestly told me, my manager said, like, "Jay, I didn't believe I lost faith, but I can't lie." It's like, I know you did, right? So to get to that point where it was like, good, now I know where I stand with everybody. I don't have to like wonder. I don't have to doubt. Now it's just me against the world. And at that point in time, a buddy of mine, Frankie, actually extended an olive branch to me and, really welcomed me in, let me train at his gym, did pads with me and stuff like that to get me sharp. And that was really instrumental. He had his supports and contacts, helped me with some sponsorship and stuff like that, and that was huge. It allowed us to create a system of how we could succeed, even though we didn't have a promoter, even though I don't have a financial backer, even though I don't have a manager. I got an agent who's an international matchmaker, and he puts me in a situation, and then I got to go handle it. And that's how my career is, right? And that's why I'm always in real fights, because I'm always the guy that somebody's sleeping on, right? And figuring, here's an easy win. Here's an old guy. He's did 20 years.
Right.
Right.
How is your training like, Jay? How often do you train? And tell our audience a little bit about your training regimen.
I train probably 29 days a month. I'm back in the gym after the following Monday of a fight, and I generally look kind of like I do right now, pretty unblemished.
Nice.
So, for me, it's a way of life. Health and fitness isn't just something that I do because of boxing. I mean, it's also my secondary career as a strength and conditioning coach right here. This is my business, right? Jab Fitness. This is where I build my body and I condition my body, and I do the majority of my skill development here. Unless I'm coming to Toronto, I'm sparring in this ring here behind you, right? That I'm
Can you
sitting
let
in.
our audience know where Jab Fitness is in case they want to get in contact with you and sign up?
Yeah, actually, it's in Surrey, in the Guildford area, and it's a home business. And if you want to reach out to me through DM or whatever the case may be, I'm happy to answer any questions about the services that I provide.
Awesome.
We'll put
Yeah,
the link in the description.
we'll put that in the exactly. We'll put it in the description, and we'll let everybody know where to reach you, so we can get more of the young blood out there that needs this direction. Um, I was just looking at your fight stats here, and it looks like Tim Chimelli looked like he wanted to get his ass kicked 2 times in a row. How does that happen where you fight the same guy 2 times in a row after you knocked him out the first time?
Well, here's a funny story about this one. So before I had my first win in Toronto there against Eli Jamil, my manager calls me the day before the fight and says, I shouldn't tell you this. And I said, well, then why are you telling me this? And he's like, well, if you win this fight, he said, I have a possible fight that nobody else wants to take. I said, well, what is it? He said, it's Tim Chimelli. I said, well, what's the deal on it? He said, well, you'd be fighting him in the main event in his hometown, right, on his own show. And I was like, okay. I said, well, I'm going to win tomorrow night. And he's like, okay, simmer down now. He said, get through that. I said, I'm going to win tomorrow night, and then I'm going to knock him out in the third round. And he's like, okay, well, yeah. So I go handle my business, knock the other guy out, and then I essentially call Danny back and say, hey, by the way, I'm sticking to round 3, eh? And then I start running my mouth for about 5 weeks about how I'm going to knock him out in the third round. And then I went and took care of it, right? So, what happened is we were fortunate enough to get on another promotion main event. And I think that fight, because of my record before that, I think Tim probably thought, okay, that was a one-off or a fluke or whatever the case may be, right? Because originally he was worried about fighting. He didn't want to fight somebody with such a poor record. And so, I'm not stupid. I know what people think. I know what they say about people with an 0-4 record, right? But I would tell my guys, and I told Danny and the other guys that were there, listen, man, I'm 0-4 now, yeah. When I'm 10 fights in, I'm gonna be 6-4. You mark my words.
Right.
Nice.
So once again, another thing that I made good on. And if you're gonna run your mouth, then you better back it up, right? And I do run my mouth and I shit talk. But really, it's just to motivate myself. And I think the best thing people could do is just keep it impersonal and not call me an old man and not take shots, because I already know the reason we're having this fight is because you think you can beat me, or you wouldn't be calling me to town if you thought I would beat you. That's the reality of boxing, right? So when someone sends me a contract, I already take it as a personal disrespect that you think you can fucking beat me. Pardon my language. And then I'm going to go show you why you can't. Right? And I know where I sit right now in the world at 149. I know when I'm done my career where I'm going to be sitting. And everything that I say, I'm going to back up.
Awesome, brother. I love that. I love that. I could see that in your eyes. I have a question. As a strength and conditioning coach, now this just came to me. You being an older fighter, to be fair, why is it, in your opinion? I haven't had the opportunity to ask the smaller guys this question, but when you like 135 to 155, up until that maybe 160, you're no good after after 35, you really start to decline at the smaller weights. Why is it that the heavyweights can keep going?
I think there's a couple of reasons there. One, a lot of these guys are coming into the sport late anyways, so then it takes them longer to develop. So they're not fighting at the same pace or the same consistency, right? Like I've been the busiest heavyweight in the country in the last 4 years or so. I was the only guy out there really doing anything during the COVID stretch, and then I've been at 3 a year here for a while. We're trying to get to 4 fights a year. But there's things that happen in the business of boxing that kind of make it difficult to be as active as I'd like to be, right? If I could, I'd be active this weekend, but I got a medical suspension that took me out of the mix until April 3rd, right?
Right,
So
right.
Do you have any fights upcoming or any fighters that you think that you'd like to fight?
yeah, basically there's a fight that's been on the table for a while. We've been wanting it. These other guys have been wanting it. And then, just recently the opportunity was there. We want that all day. Essentially, this is a guy that his coach stopped the sparring and uninvited us back for the next spar that we were supposed to have, right? So, like, at the end of the day, I'm actually kind of surprised they even want this, because if you're pulling the sparring, and people can say sparring don't matter, but I can tell you, I've been boxing 33 years, and sparring matters, right? When you want it to matter, it matters, right? You can take that loser's mentality, like, oh, it doesn't matter. I was just working on stuff, right? When you're getting your head punched in, right, you can say whatever you want. Doesn't mean we're going to believe it, right? So
Absolutely.
tape don't lie, but I also recognize that, like, I'm that guy that I don't have anything to hide, and I've had my character assassinated for 26 years, so I got nothing to hide. Like, so to me, I don't mind posting around and me sparring with somebody, right?
Right.
But I know how, like, the business of boxing, people are paranoid about that kind of stuff. But like, if you're out there really doing your thing, right? What do you look at? You go watch a YouTube video, right? And you see fighters fighting, right? So
Yeah.
like, you can't hide yourself out there when there's that social media out there. So like, if you're gonna hide, this and that, basically, then you're in the wrong business, right?
Well said.
Absolutely agree with that completely. Your take on the current situation in heavyweight boxing or boxing in general. Do you like what you're seeing? Do you like what the Saudis are doing? Did you catch the Nagano Joshua fight? Your thoughts?
Well, to be honest with you, I think that these sideshows are terrible for boxing. And, the second that one of these YouTube guys gets seriously hurt, there's going to be some Karen or Kevin that's clamoring for boxing to be, stopped altogether globally, right? And, the truth of the matter is I love the money that they're throwing into the sport, right? But they're throwing it into like these circus sideshows. And like, to be honest with you, I have great respect for what Francis Ngannou has, come through in adversity in his life. Like, what a story, right?
Yeah.
And he was absolutely being underpaid and underappreciated during his time in MMA before he left to the PFL, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
I think that really Tyson Fury saw that opportunity as a low-hanging fruit gimmick to make himself look good, right? Where he's trying to get this guy paid and get him more money than he's ever made. And yeah, that was part of it, right? But he also looked at that as easy money, right? And it didn't turn out to be that way for him, right?
Yeah.
And so then fast forward now to the Joshua fight. And, at any which way you cut, it doesn't matter how, much, Tyson Fury's in the gym training hard and running his mouth, right? His stock has been hurt considerably. And, people are starting to lose favor of Tyson Fury. That's the reality of it, right? Because if you're a real fighting man, then you want to be in there 3-4 times a year. Even if you're not a champion, you should want to do that, right? Otherwise, you're in the wrong sport. You should get out of the way. You're in this business for the wrong reason, right? It's like, the Mexican B side of pro boxing in Canada was just negative impact. by the government's decision on tourism and travel and all that sort of stuff, right? And there's going to be a lot of people that are really upset about that in Canada, right? I'm not one of them because I never ever used the Mexican B-side system to get where I'm at. And I think at the end of the day, running numbers doesn't really help you in the world rankings. The reason why I've climbed like 1,300 spots in the world in 2 years is because I'm always fighting guys with better records than me. I'm always fighting up, right? I'm always in real fights. And that's why there's 4 of those behind me, despite the fact that I got no promoter, no manager, no financial backer, right? I got no coach, no trainer, no boxing club, but what you see right here.
4 belts.
And I got this, and I got this.
Well, that's just an inspiration for anyone who really wants it, work for it, and the proof is right there behind you. Absolutely.
Who are some of your favorite fighters to watch growing up, or who are some of the fighters that inspire you?
Roy Jones was one of the guys that really inspired me when I was younger. Felix Trinidad, James Toney was probably he's in my top 3 for sure, of guys that influenced me. Muhammad Ali was probably the person that I patterned myself after. And right there, I got, him, that little gift from one of my clients was an homage really to who I am and how I carry myself and what I believe you're supposed to do as a fighter and as a champion, right?
Cool.
So you spent a lot of time down in Nova Scotia, and that seems like, if not Montreal, Toronto, Nova Scotia is that other place where boxing is a hotbed. Home of Castillo Clayton, home of Ryan Rozecki. I believe, in my opinion, to be one of the bright lights of Canadian boxing coming up here, man. People don't know about, they know him, but not everybody knows him. Your take on the Nova Scotia scene and the guys that are coming out of there right now.
Well, Ryan, that's my brother from another mother. He's one of my main sparring partners when I go to Toronto. Great respect for him. Guy's a real warrior. He's going to be WBC world champion here sooner than later. I have no doubt in my mind. I just hope that I get a chance to work with him for that training camp. Castillo is actually he's a relative. He's another guy, super talented, and I think I don't know what's really going on with the Nova Scotia scene too much, just because myself, I'm not really able to move around the way that I'd like to, right? But I can pretty much operate from Montreal west, and honestly, that's where the big money fights and stuff like that are. I would love to be able to fight in Halifax. To be honest with you, I think Halifax and Nova Scotia deserves and needs me to be back there fighting and packing those places, because there's going to be just as many people that are there hoping to see me fail, right? They're going to pay their ticket too, right? So at the end of the day, it's good for the local economy to have me fighting, because I'm exciting to watch. I'm not out there, basically fencing. That's what these guys are doing. Who was it, man? Somebody said it the other day. I was watching it. They're like, these guys are just out there fencing in the heavyweight division, man, trying to not get hit and stick a little, right? I'm trying to knock your head off. That's it. I'm not coming for a decision because I don't believe I'm going to get a fair decision. So that's not even part of my thought process, right?
Yeah, just watching.
I think you said it best. You don't play with your food, right?
Yeah, it's just it, man. Like, basically, I don't have any reason to want to take it lightly on anybody in there. The reality is that I'm more disadvantaged in there than everyone I'm ever going to face. I'm always the shorter guy. I'm always going to have less reach. I'm always going to be older, right? So, the reality is these people are in there trying to take my dream from me, and they're trying to hurt me, right? So the way I look at it is, how can I not take that hugely personal and not be just the most savage motherfucker I can be to them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, people might keep sleeping on me, but they're going to realize afterwards they should have been absolutely terrified to get in there with me.
Absolutely.
Different.
For sure. When it comes to training, how do you put, without a coach and everything, what do you focus on? How do you train without that support staff? Is it become normal for you now, or is it?
Yeah, honestly, I don't mind it. Like, to be honest with you, I look forward to the times I'm standing across the ring with Big 12 and he's got his coach DeWitt Fraser there, or his other coach Jackie, or when I'm sparring with Ryan and he's got his coach Steve Bailey there. Because the way I look at it, I feel like it's 2 against 1. And for me, that's even more of a challenge. And if I can work against 2 people, right, that are putting their heads together trying to figure me out, and I'm still having success, in essentially still building myself, still ascending. Like my skills aren't diminishing, and they're not diminishing because I don't have a coach sitting there putting me in the game. When I'm in Toronto, one of my cousins, Ricky Atkinson, he'll do a couple rounds of pads with me before I hurt his elbows moving around too much, right? But I got what I need. It's just it's an ensemble cast of people that lend a hand and that I'm grateful for, right? I've got a whole recovery team in Toronto that looks after me. I've got, my people out here in BC that make sure that whatever I can't take care of is taken care of. And, really I'm showing that you can do it yourself, but you got to have 30 years in the bag, and you got to have absolute supreme confidence and belief in what you're doing. And I do, I'm a man of faith, so I absolutely believe that this is my destiny, and this is me executing God's plan for me, right?
Awesome. Now you talk about faith, and that's pretty important to us here as well. How has faith played a role through everything?
I mean, I think it's played a role in many ways. There's been times where my faith has waned. There's been times where it's been super strong. My faith really isn't about religion. It's about spirituality. I'm a spiritual person, right? And
Mhm.
essentially, I've I've got my ties and connections to the church through family and stuff like that. I've spent my time in the church when I was young, from a baby being brought into the church and raised up through being there with my family and stuff, my grandmother and my aunts and uncles and cousins. But I also, spent a lot of time focusing on my First Nations spirituality, when I was inside for 20 years.
Right.
That's really kind of what helped me elevate I guess, my path, right? My ascension took me there, and then from there I started getting exposed out here to all kinds of other resources that I could learn from and kind of reshape my perception and views on things. And it's interesting. I don't spend a lot of time in a church or a sweat lodge these days, but when I'm there, I have the opportunity to really appreciate it for what it is. Because when I was in there all the time, my level and understanding in life wasn't what it is now, right? So
What is your Aboriginal background, if it's okay to ask?
yeah, my relatives in the Maritimes are black, native, and white. That's
Oh,
basically the mix, right? So it's Mi'kmaq that are in the maritime area and stuff like that. And so with my family, a lot of that kind of information never really got shared because sometimes there'd be some family secrets or dirt that nobody wants to talk about. And then it just kind of gets swept under the rug when people pass away or whatever the case may be. So, I've got relatives that have a lot more information on my family history and stuff like that. But I just know that I was a nice little blend and combination.
that's interesting. I always remember the Métis, which are the white and Aboriginals. Never
Yeah.
even thought about black and the Aboriginal mixing down there. That's
They'll call them like Afro mateys and stuff like that.
oh wow, crazy.
Times, yeah,
Shows you how big this country truly is.
yeah, and how big, like just how there's pockets of people that belong to certain ethnic origins or histories, and we don't really realize it, right? They're not mainstream. They're not being broadcasted or amplified, right? And so, even myself, like I was saying to you when we were talking, right? I haven't had any newspaper articles regarding any of the success in boxing and stuff like that. And fortunately for me, I don't do this for that reason anyways. So I'm not
Yeah.
terribly disturbed by the fact that there's no newspapers covering any of the stuff that I'm doing, right? Because really the work that I'm trying to do in this world isn't about standing on a soapbox and grandstanding, right? Like I've had opportunities to work with people individually in this gym and help change their life through correcting serious issues they had going on. To me, that matters a hell of a lot more than standing on some soapbox with a camera in my face talking about all the things that I'm gonna do or want to do. It's like
You just do it.
I just do it, right?
Yeah, that's
I know I
awesome.
make a difference every day in the people's lives that I work with, and that's good enough for me.
All right. So Jay, on the show, what we like to do is some quick fire, rapid fire. You up for that?
Sure, fire away.
So we're gonna Chancellor's gonna shoot out some names to you, and just
Okay.
give us your instant reaction.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Well, you already mentioned before, so it's one of the guys. I won't mention him again. Tyson Fury.
Does that count?
Yeah,
Fair
that
play.
counts. Yeah, it's a
That
reaction.
counts,
Yeah.
yeah.
Fair enough.
Manny Pacquiao.
He was such a treat to watch, and I loved him because he was a lefty.
Yeah. Oh, you're a southpaw too. Yeah. Triple G.
Another one of those guys that doesn't get the respect that he truly deserves for how stand-up of a guy he was.
Canelo.
Fun to watch. I've stolen some of my game from him.
I like that. I like that. And up and comer, the Mexican monster, David Benavidez.
Love the guy. I'm honestly disappointed that Canelo hasn't made that fight, but the fact that he hasn't tells us everything we need to know, right?
And last one for you, Floyd Money Mayweather.
Go away, Floyd.
Yeah.
Go away.
Yeah.
Your time in the sport was respected. You did some awesome stuff, right? But now you're looking like that guy that's sticking around too long that people are kind of getting tired of. Now you're bickering with Haney and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It just brings you down a level, right? You have to know when to go away. Go away, take your money and live a good life. Pull back some of the spending habits and live off of your wealth. You know what I mean? And then you don't have to keep jumping back in the ring and taking these exhibitions, because that feeds into the system of this garbage that's going on in boxing, right?
Yeah.
This like exhibition shit, right? You're either a fighter or you're not. If you are, you put 10-ounce gloves on and you have sanctioned fights. If you don't or you can't, then you retire and then you just spar in the gym and you fucking live your life, right? But why should we have to pay to watch guys that are way past their prime in many cases coming back into the ring and risking serious injury?
Fair play, man. Absolutely. You're correct on the money there. Jay, you've experienced a lot. Your life has shown you a lot. You've seen a lot. You've had to deal with a lot. At this very moment, what would your message be to inspiring athletes, boxers, or people who are just at a point in their life where you might have been at one point with really no light in sight? What's your message to the world?
Just simply that you got to believe in yourself, especially when nobody else does, right? Like that's the one thing that I came back to at times where I felt hopeless and felt like there was nothing positive to hang on to. It's just you have to get up every day and do the same thing until it gets a little bit better, right? And the world really is cold. It doesn't care about your problems. Most people don't really care about your problems, even the ones that know you, because they got their own problems that they're already overwhelmed by. So, you just got to find a way to make it happen for yourself, right? And so, I got to watch guys that I grew up with on the national team for years, like Stevie Molitor and Adam Trupish, and these guys went on to have very successful careers, and I had to watch them in a prison cell. And that was one of the most painful things to have to experience, to be so happy for your bros, but to be so upset that you're not there doing the same thing. But like that had to happen for me to motivate me and to make sure that when I got out here and I started dealing with, turbulence on the way, that I had my shit together enough to make sure that I wasn't out there getting distracted along the way, because I got a very limited window. Some would think it's a lot shorter than I do, but I think that I got another 5 to 7 years, and I don't see myself slowing down in there. I don't see anybody beating me to the punch, and I'm going to continue to fight up until I am the guy sitting with the ones that I want. And sooner or later, I'm going to end up getting those calls. There's going to be guys up top there that are looking for low-hanging fruit, and I'm going to come serve it to them.
That's
I hope
awesome.
you do.
We
I love
can't
your
wait,
positive
man.
mindset.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think a lot of people can take a lot from this, and I hope they can, and be a part of that. Jay, we want to say thank you so much for taking out the time. It's been an amazing conversation, and I hope we can do it again. Let us know when you're fighting next. We'd love to be there if we can be, and support you in any way possible. You got Jab Fitness Enterprises behind you, so people could come and check you out there as well. We'll make that a point. So from the bottom of my heart, from Mr. Chancellor as well, thank you so much for coming on today's show and sharing your insight, your life story, and the motivation. Most importantly, the most motivation that you're providing here for a lot of people that we may not even know. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you having me on. You guys
Yeah,
take
thanks
care.
for coming, man.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming, man. Thank you so much.